Hello, it's Sophie here from High Peak Community Arts, and I just thought I'd put together a little video to show you how to make a patchwork rainbow for your windows. I know you might be thinking that I'm a bit behind the times making rainbows for windows, but actually around now is when all the paper ones that everyone's made early on are starting to curl up a little bit, and you might want something a little bit more robust to hang in your window for longer. So the method I'm going to use is one that I learnt in a Japanese folded patchwork book. It's a really nice technique, and in this video I'm going to tell you what you need to be able to make it, how to design it, how to make the templates for it, how to prepare your fabric, how to make the circle shapes and sew it together, and how to finish it all off. So yeah, I'll just crack on ahead. First of all, you will need some fabric, ideally rainbow colours. I'd like to have up to 7, I think at least 5, but you could do it probably with 3 or 4 if you only had 3 or 4 different colours, but 7 is nice. You can see I've got some really nice rainbow colours there in a variety of different sorts of fabric. You'll need some cotton, or some embroidery thread, or a bit of both. You will need needles, sewing needles, and pins, and you will need some cardboard. This is an old cereal packet. It could be any kind of cardboard. The size of the piece of cardboard you've got dictates how big your rainbow will be. You will need scissors. I've got fabric scissors, but I've also got a pair of ordinary scissors for cutting my cardboard with. You'll need circle shapes to draw around. That could be different sized dinner plates or mugs, or you could even use a piece of string and 2 pens to tether together, and then you can choose your own sizes. Then I am going to use my sewing ruler, which has got a series of holes up the middle, which means I can put a pin into one hole there and pivot on that pin with a pen in another hole, and I can choose a different size for different size circles. Oh, you'll also need an iron and an ironing board. I've just got some folded fabric on top of my table here, so that will do. A folded up towel or something like that on a table will do, or an ironing board is ideal. So if you've got all those things, you are good to go. Okay, so to design your rainbow, I've got all these really good rainbow colours, but I don't actually think it has to be strict rainbow colours. You could have some patterned fabric in there, and where you get your fabric from is up to you really. I'm a bit of a hoarder, so I've got loads of different colours, but you might have some old clothes that are too worn out to give to a charity shop. You could use most fabrics for this. T-shirt fabric would work. If you have fabrics that are prone to fraying, or if they're quite thick, you'll need to have a bigger seam allowance as you go along. I've got quite a thick one there that I think will need a bigger seam allowance than some of the thinner ones. I've also got some t-shirty type fabric there, so I think a lot of that's cotton as well. So yeah, you just have to decide what seam allowance you need as you go along. So you arrange your fabrics in the order that you like. It's nice if they blend from one to another like a rainbow would. And then you need to decide on your size. So you might say, well, I've got loads of red, so that'll be my biggest circle, or haven't got very much purple, so that'll have to be my smallest one, or whatever. So you work out which is your biggest and which is your smallest, and how big you can make your biggest circle, and then that tells you how big your biggest template is going to be. So first step is to make your templates. You'll need a different size of circle for each colour, with the largest disc being the final size of the rainbow. I'm going to make my biggest one the size of one side of this, so you can see my ruler is allowing me to draw this circle, although the cardboard isn't. So that's my biggest circle there. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut 2 circles, and the second one is going to be the second biggest. And you'll see at the end, it's because you're going to use this biggest one to actually put inside the rainbow at the end, so you need to have that left over, but you don't need the second biggest one to be left over. And now I'm going to cut them out using my knot fabric scissors. So to recap, you've got 2 templates, one's your biggest size, one is your second biggest size, with all the other sizes drawn onto that second one, as you can see. Great. If you're planning to make lots of these, you can make one of each size of template, so you'll need however many templates as you've got colours of fabric. If you're just making one rainbow, the 2 templates will do. Tick! Next you need to cut your fabric. So you're going to cut first of all your largest size of fabric, and then your second largest size of fabric. And the important thing to remember is you need to add your seam allowance onto the template. So on top of the size of the template, draw a seam allowance around the outside. So I'm laying out my fabric, and it's a nice light cotton fabric, so I'm not going to add a huge seam allowance on, but if that's the edge of my template, I'm adding about, what, ½ an inch, a bit less than a centimetre onto the outside. And this is for a cotton. I think it'd be the same for a t-shirt fabric. If it was a thick fabric, you might need to add 1.5 centimetres, which is like just over ½ an inch, or a fraying fabric, again just add a bit extra on, but that's okay for that. Really don't have to worry about this being perfect. So that's my first one. You can see this is a bit of a stretchy fabric, but I don't think it's a problem. This piece of fabric actually you can see has come from an old dress or something, or an old top, because it's still got the hem attached to it, and it's a little thicker than the other one, so I am going to add a bit more of a seam allowance on. But that's because I'm a bit of a hoarder when it comes to fabric. If I see something nice, I think, oh, that top or that dress can't be worn anymore, but that'll come in for something. Before I go any further, I am going to make these first 2 circles. So what we want to do is, with our first template, we are going to lay that on top and make sure we're happy, and then we're going to do a running stitch with an ordinary cotton that goes halfway between the edge of the template and the outer edge of the fabric. You need your thread to be long enough to go all the way around the outside. So if you're making a big one, you are going to need a really long piece of thread, and it will not work if you don't. So one end you want to secure quite tightly by going over a couple of times, or doing a knot, or whatever your preferred method is. And then I'm just going to go around the outside, nice and evenly, little running stitches. When you get to the other end, take off the needle. Don't secure the other end, so you've got one end that's securely sewn and the other end that's open. You can see here template, and the sewing is halfway between. Great, so we've got one template and one piece of fabric. I could do the second one, but I'm going to crack on next. Now you need your iron. So I've put that on to heat. Now we prepare for the magic. You won't believe it. If you remember, put the iron there. You've got one end of your thread which is open and the other end is fixed. So hold your template down and pull from the open end all the way around, and it pulls the fabric into a circle. It's magic. It's magic. Then gently peel it back all the way around. Pull the template out. You'll need that later. Put to one side. Then take your second template and your second fabric and do the same again. So now we've got two of these. Hello, back again. So here you can see that I've got a whole load of different sizes of circle here in all the different colours. So that's lovely. These are my offcuts. These are my offcuts of template as I've taken off each layer, and I've ended up with this tiny little template at the end. I think my rainbow is a bit on the small side actually, so you might make a bigger one. But so the next step is to start sewing together, and I've started doing that on here with these small. I think it's easiest to start with the smallest ones. And what I've discovered as I've been making is that some of the fabrics are easier to handle than others. This one, this turquoise, is a lovely colour, but it's quite slippery and moves quite a lot, so that's been a bit trickier to handle, harder to keep it in a nice circle shape. Whereas the blue on the inside there was quite easy to handle, but I think I made my seam allowance a little bit too big on that blue, because I've got some bits where it's not as smooth a circle as the other places. It's got little points on it. I don't think it really matters overall, it still looks nice, but if you want perfection then get your seam allowance the right size. So I just wanted to, it's just sewing it together now. You can use your pins to pin it, and use whatever stitch you want to sew. On here you can see I've done a couple of different options. In the middle I've done like an invisible kind of stitch, a slip stitch, where you catch a couple of threads of one layer and a few threads from underneath there. That can be a bit fiddly to do, but it's quite a nice effect to get at the end. The easiest one to do is a nice neat running stitch, probably, and I think it actually looks really nice in a running stitch, so if that's what you fancy doing then that's probably your easiest option. You can also use some embroidery stitches like a blanket stitch. using nice contrasting colour. You're working in that direction around towards you. Put your needle in, through, wrap the thread round the needle. Pull it through, and you end up with that.
Okay. So you're working towards you in this direction. You hold the thread down, put the needle in, catch the fabric underneath, bring it through, make sure the thread is under the needle, bring it through, make sure it doesn't catch on the pin, give it a little tug to tighten it up, and repeat.
So here is the finished circles, all nicely sewn together. You can see that I've used a range of different stitches, blanket stitches, different colours of thread, and it all looks really nice. So the last stage is to take your original big template and bend it. I could fold it in half, or I could cut it in half. Either way, it's going to form the stiffness of the overall thing. I could slip it inside one. Actually, I'm going to cut it in half. And you might find you want to trim it a little tiny bit to make it fit, but I think it should be okay. So yeah, you can see, because of all the different layers, that template is now too fat, so I'm going to trim it. You can see how it's going to be. Tuck in your edges, and I'm just going to sew around the outside there. Look how lovely it is. And you can hang it in your window. So you could make variations on a theme on this. You could choose different sorts of fabric. You could choose some with patterns on. You could choose to do it monochrome and just do different tones of the same colour. That would be nice. This style of Japanese patchwork, folded patchwork, sometimes they pad some of the layers, so you could choose one of those layers that you wanted to pad. You have to do it quite delicately if you still wanted to fold it afterwards, so you have to sort of pad it in two halves. But that would be quite nice. You could stuff the whole thing. If you didn't have the cardboard inside, you could stuff it into a little, if you're going to make a bigger one, you'd end up with a little cushion. Yeah. Enjoy!